I've known Kristi for a while, and we talk about things on campus. And once in a while, I'll get our tails on a sling on campus. But she's a wonderful teacher. She also worked with Jamel Brooks a little bit at Piedmont Tech. They had their same way. And she has some good ideas. She's going to talk to you about something that, in fact, dealing with stress and things like that with the holidays coming up. And she's an expert in it. And I'd like to welcome you.
Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone is well. I will not be before you long. Just to give some additional, get me right, Bill, what I need to do. Oh, thank you. I just want to add on to some of the information Tori provided you. I was asked to come here and speak on mental health. For me, it's hard to talk about mental health without mentioning the strain that is also going on in our community. So you're going to probably get a little bit of both sides of the coin of information with that. My first and primary job is being an academic program director at Piedmont Technical College, the Human Services program. Been there for quite some time, and so of course that's our connection, Tori and I. And I also own and operate a practice here in Greenwood called Surface PCT, Psychotherapy Consulting and Training Services. So I get the best of both worlds to work for the state and kind of facilitate a lot of those dynamics there, work with a wonderful group of students, faculty, and staff. And also some of the discussion that's being had already about what business looks like and the impact there. I also get the opportunity to do that as well. I want to, before I get into the discussion and giving you some information, I also want to give a shout out to some of my blue and white family here. I am a part of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, the exquisite Epsilon Psi Zeta chapter of Greenwood, South Carolina. I see some family members here, Sarah Bowles, my sister Bowles, my sister Ella Hill, and of course the blue and white family, Miss Melson, the queen of her Mika Auxiliary, and Zeta Male Network representation here, her son, Jacarius Childs, and of course my husband, who's also a part of that family. And my family is here, my dad and mom sitting back there. Anybody who knows Maxie Coleman, you're going to know you're going to get some questions and you're going to get some information. He's an avid studier of world issues and economy. So you can understand that our family gatherings are pretty lit, to say the least. And my dear mom there sitting at the table came along to be here and support me today. I appreciate y'all being here. As mentioned, and last but certainly not least, my husband, Pastor Donnie Byrd, pastor the Mount Enon Baptist Church out of Saluda. He's here always supporting, always being there, and I certainly appreciate all of you for being here today. And so again, I was requested here to talk about mental health. I want to see if y'all can walk with me today. I want to invite you to close your eyes for a moment. Imagine going to sleep and then waking up. You look at the clock and you realize it's 1 a.m. You turn over and begin to think about all you need to do. All the things that you're trying not to forget. Pick up the clothes from the cleaners, pick up the kids, take them where they got to go, making sure you don't forget to talk to your coworker about the report, just to realize you really haven't finished the report. Then you go down a rabbit hole of trying to plan how to complete the report and finish your work successfully. You turn over, you look at the clock, and you realize it's 5:30 a.m. The stress, you close your eyes and try to go back to sleep. And then the alarm sounds at 6 a.m. You lie in bed feeling drained, and you remind yourself to get up, shower, brush your teeth, brush your hair. You feel burdened by all of these routines and activities, so you decide to do the easiest one for today. You make it to work, start on the report, and now the worry begins. Wondering about the unfinished report, you can't remember even the information to complete it. You sit at the desk, you're thinking out loud, who could you call for help? More and more and more restlessness sits in at the thought of calling your boss. He's already lost your confidence in your ability to do the job. So you start typing, backspace, type, spacebar, type, highlighting, deleting. Frustration sits in. You pause and manage your thoughts and look up and realize it's already time to go home. You gather your things and you leave for the day. Arriving home, forgetting about the dry cleaners and all the other activities that you had in place for you that day. Realizing, you know what? I haven't eaten all day. Snacks for dinner tonight, I guess. You look at your watch. You realize it's Friday night. And this has kind of been your schedule all week. Riddled with sadness and feelings of hopelessness, a flood of emotions come, and you finally allow sleep to find you. I want you to open your eyes. This and more are the struggles of 1 in 5 people living among us. People who may be suffering with mental illnesses. What is mental health? What is mental illnesses? I'm glad you asked. There's a difference. Mental health versus mental illness. Mental health, I would say that we all have a portion of it. We can probably thank our higher power for that. We will go through life, ebbs and flows, perhaps. We're going to feel some of these emotions. We're going to have days and moments where we're sad, perhaps even days and moments where we're glad. We're going to feel some incongruences throughout our day. And that's what's expected of our making, our being, right? We're going to ebb and flow with emotions. Sometimes these emotions are situational. Once situations resolve, we kind of get back where we need to be. But perhaps mental illness is a little bit different. We begin to recognize that this is not just an ebb and flow. This is pretty much a consistent routine or a feeling for an individual. It is not just sadness. It can be a deep, daunting sadness that does not find relief. It is not just a thought. Thoughts turn into worry, and they're very consistent, and it seems like there is no resolve for them. Sometimes those thoughts, worry, and sadness can also lead to panic. It's also encased with perceptions and things that we feel like we cannot change. Strong feelings perhaps of hopelessness. So oftentimes with mental illnesses, these things don't lift very easily in these symptoms that people may have. I know this is a lot of information, and the information can be very overwhelming and very heavy. Just like I'm an advocate of providing information, I too am an advocate of making sure we provide solutions. What do we do about all of this? So in this time of holiday, for some people cheer, for some people not so much. In these times of all the things that's kind of going on in our environments and our society, I want to invite us to do some things about this. We have a lot of populations in our community struggling with mental illnesses and unhealthy mental well-being. And you're asking, so what can we do? And I want to give you some tips on that. We can seek and secure helps, most importantly for ourselves, if we find ourselves in those places from the story that I just mentioned, or if we know of someone who could be struggling with any of those symptoms that we mentioned. We can normalize these helps as well. We need to have the conversations, and I appreciate him saying that earlier today, that we need to have the conversations, whether it's the conversation in our family about mental well-being and mental health, having the conversations on our jobs, in our communities. Those things are very important. When we talk about this more and more, we normalize this information for everybody else, and not just the information, but also we normalize the help that's needed for individuals suffering with mental illnesses. We could provide and learn more about assistance. A lot of research has been done so far, and studies reflect when persons living with mental illnesses have their needs met. And we're talking about needs. We're talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Y'all remember that in school. The safety, the food, the shelter. The food, the shelter. America, we got to do better. We cannot have a population, whole population of unfed individuals and think that's okay. When those needs are being met, then the likelihood of a person, any persons and persons suffering with mental illnesses, the likelihood of their symptoms being managed will increase. Lastly, we can offer hope and be hopeful. Living in a world of political unrest is more important than ever to match this restlessness with work. We cannot allow systems to disrupt 4 years of what we have spent years, and for some of us, a lifetime to protect. What we do matters, and I would just want to put emphasis on the do. We got to put some work in here. I am hopeful that connections and health and mental well-being exist, and we continue the services for this. I am hopeful we will continue to overturn poor decisions that negatively impact our country, especially our underserved populations. I am hopeful that all, I heard y'all say earlier, all persons living with mental illnesses can and will have services that they need. Let's all do something to lift the burdens plaguing populations with mental illnesses. Thank you so much for your time, and I'll open the floor if there should be any questions.
I believe.
Yes.
How do you distinguish the early stages of mental illness? Not once we've been clinically diagnosed with it. It's like when you fall into that pattern that says, I just don't feel like engaging. Some might call it depression, but to the person walking through it, they may not recognize it as depression. They just don't feel like being bothered. And that goes for a day, which goes for a week, which goes for a month, and then all of a sudden you're in a space. How do you recognize that, and what can you do to kind of get yourself back out of that?
I think that's a really good question. I think it can happen. Like if we're there, especially early on, I think we live in a society where we may downplay symptoms too related to mental illness. And of course we know mental well-being, mental illnesses is on the spectrum. Some symptoms for individuals could be a little bit more severe, and for others may not be as severe. I think, again, it's important that we have the conversations. If that person is feeling it, we're probably noticing it too, right? So as a caring individual, that connection, I think, is very important. It's very therapeutic to help people express what they might be feeling, right? If it's something that's being noticed, have the conversation. I notice that you're not yourself lately. I noticed that, you used to be more involved in different activities, and you're here lately, I'm not seeing you at them. I've missed you. Tell me what's going on. So open the door to conversation and normalizing what you may be observing for the individual, and again, providing services and helps, or asking them, how can I support you through this symptom, right? Or through whatever they might be feeling. Yeah. For a lot of us, we may be feeling it more and the impact more because of the holiday season. Of course, there's the seasonal affective disorder that's going on, because this change in weather and temperature, it can affect you. It can make you feel a little different, right? But the early on that we engage in those conversations, provide support and resources for individuals, the more opportunity we have to help people through the situation. And actually, we have an opportunity to keep some of these symptoms from sticking and turning into long-term disorders. That connection is everything. Thank you for that. Any other questions? Ma'am, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Good question. There's a lot of providers in the community. You know, I'm a therapist as well. I always love to take referrals, but also any entity should be trained to assist with this. So some of that could start with a discussion with a therapist. It could start with a discussion with your healthcare provider, right? Your PCP, if you have one. If not, there are a lot of free clinics that assist with this. There's a lot of work on the ground to help with it. And I mentioned the connection. Everybody's symptoms can be managed differently. For some people, they definitely need to go see the professional. For some people, they may need to reconnect or get outside themselves to connect with other individuals, like friends, fellowshipping in congregations and churches, or even groups. There are a lot of support groups also that's being offered in the community that also may be a good place to start. Absolutely. Good question.
Good morning again.
Good morning.
My question is, when you recognize that there's someone that has a mental condition that is diagnosed, triggers are so hard. I find that we have a hard time trying to avoid what might trigger the individual. It appears to us that it's holidays, birthdays, things like that. So what can we do to try to help that when those days come around, that individual will not, you know, just become so, I don't know how to describe it. It's a feeling of just outrage and depression all combined.
It's a good question. Of course, I use this example all the time. I would like to think I'm a good fighter. Kind of grew up, you know, fighting brother or sister, that kind of thing. But I know I've had some battles in my life where I've lost them, the fights, right? The big thing about a fight is really trying to get in front of it. Right? So you said something very profound. Apparently there's a certain time of year where this event occurs and the same behavior begins to happen over and over again. The prevention part of it, trying not to have to go into the fight, is what's important, right? Having those conversations before the person is triggered, before they go into the state perhaps of sadness and or depression. But if you find the person there, and I heard you say we've tried to help a lot, we've tried to avoid triggers, it's hard to do that. Like, we live life every single day, and what we may think a trigger might be, somebody else may not, or vice versa, right? If y'all have done the work with trying to assist a person, maybe this is an opportunity to take it up a level and get to a professional, right? One of the conversations that I had with one of my clients just recently, you know, medication is still a thing. Like, some of us, the chemical imbalance is so imbalanced that we need additional helps, like the medication. That's kind of half of the battle. The other half of the battle is what we do to manage the symptoms outside of medication. So some of that might need to be talk therapy, psychotherapy, therapy and counseling. It also might need to be coping skills, right? The way that we've learned to deal with something in life, we tend to transfer that to other areas of life. We might need a new bunch of coping skills, and that's what that professional does. They help walk you through those things. Some of us need to feel and immerse ourselves in the experiences, no matter how uncomfortable they may be, so we can learn how we need to readjust that and recondition our brains to perceive the experience a little differently. So it's a combination of things. It's not just one better than the other. For a person who might be suffering on that level, it might be both things that they need to do, as well as keep providing that person support. I commend you for recognizing that and being there to help the individual. Good question.
I have a question that's directed towards the audience, bringing it into a political realm.
Yeah.
As a practicing therapist, have you encountered patients or read about in your studies a phenomena where stress and mental health is affected by discussions of politics or political topics, or people who are doom scrolling or are glued to the TV? How has that changed over the years of your practice? And what recommendations do you offer to counter that unhealthy practice?
I'm glad you brought that up, Bill, because I had that as a side note, and I was like, maybe I should or should not say that. I'll be honest, because I'm true to myself before I do anything. I'm not a fan of Trump. I can appreciate, however, the increase in clients that he has sent me because of all the political unrest. However, it also shines the light on, again, the symptoms related to mental illness. If a person perhaps is suffering from anxiety, if they feel that is a lot of uncertainty, a lot of changes, a lot of situations happening with no solutions, it can exacerbate, make the anxiety worse. We do need to take breaks away from all of the stuff that we hear and see day in and day out. It can contribute to this in not so much of a good way. And for some individuals who might be more than just there's a slight mood change, of course we're kind of moving along that spectrum, perhaps with a disorder, a mental illness, that's one of the recommendations I give to them. You know, take a break, put the phone down. Let's not scroll on social media this week. Let's monitor yourself and see what changes you may have encountered as a result of kind of breaking away from some of the things that you're seeing. I always encourage, it's something about having options for individuals that kind of helps break that point of hopelessness. Sometimes we have to go find what the options are. Sometimes we have to have the conversations to really know the information, not just speculation, right? I think that's very important. So those mental breaks can certainly help us. And our perception, some of the stuff that's happening in our society, we cannot control. And that's a hard pill to swallow. These things are happening. They're happening fast. People are being disrupted of their comfort zones, food insecurity, shelter insecurity. Some of these things, unfortunately, we cannot control. So what we can control, though, is our perception around these things. Where can we find hope in all of this stuff that's going on? Where can we find connection, perhaps, in all of this stuff and in a world where we feel so disconnected? So that's why I'm here. I want to make sure we're offering hope and we're speaking the language surrounding hope for some of these things that are happening. Thank you. I think that's a good question. I hope I answered.
A lot of people don't know your neighbors and stuff and get to know them, or who you work with. My mom's family has depression runs through it. My grandmother tried to commit suicide when she was about 6 on the floor in the kitchen. Thank God my sister tackled it. Sister's about 10 years older than me. But the one thing Mom taught me, because she didn't have the problem, she made the decision early on she wasn't. You always knew when Mom was upset or thinking about something, she'd hit the piano. If it was Bach, we knew to stay away from her. I tend to go walk or work in my garden, and a lot of people don't realize I watercolor. That was something that she taught me. Mom did. Find something that you can get rid of that feeling, that you escape out of it. It could be going up to the state park and just sitting and looking at the lake. But those are things that you have to kind of, and if you can assure other people to do that. Because if they keep coming in the house, seeing those feelings, seeing all that, even in the worst situation, you have to sometimes walk away from it and think.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tori. Thank y'all so much for having me.
It's not exactly the topic you would have expected at a political gathering, right? But it's a recognition of we're whole, and we've got to address all parts of us, and that we're living in a very dynamic time, and we need to learn how to walk through that. I look at, I'm one of those doom scrollers on Facebook as well, and I'm always amazed at all the black folks learning the new line dances. If nothing else, we found a way to cope with all of the chaos that's going on politically. Y'all do what you're going to do over there. We got some boots on the ground over here that we need to master. And at first I thought, well, how irresponsible can you be? But I looked at it again. I'm like, we've been dealing with adversity since my granddaddy's days, if not even longer than that. And you can sit there and be overwhelmed by the situation, or you can find a way to find your joy in the midst of. And when you wake up from that, those same problems are still going to be there, but you'll be in a more energized state to go deal with it. So I'm not saying I've got any boots that are going to be on the ground anytime soon, but we do need to find a way to restore some balance into our personal lives so that we can then be better agents for some of the collective changes that we need to have going on. So I appreciate you for your work. I appreciate you for coming and talking with us today about what could have been a very heady topic, but you're breaking it down in a way that we as lay people can embrace it and figure out ways that we can navigate our way forward. Are there any other questions or comments? I thank you guys for coming out this morning. I encourage you to still reach out to those in your spheres of influence and have these kinds of conversations. It will make a difference. With that, we're adjourned.